Imagine being told your name is no longer yours. Imagine the words you used to say "I love you" or "I'm scared" are now forbidden. Imagine the songs you sing to your gods are silenced, and the faces of your mother, your father, your children are stolen from you forever. This isn't a dystopian novel. This was the lived reality for millions of Africans forced into the transatlantic slave trade. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most brutal, yet often overlooked, aspects of slavery: the systematic stripping away of identity. When a person was captured in Africa and forced onto a slave ship, the process of erasure began almost immediately. They're given names that held deep personal, familial, and cultural significance, were forcibly replaced. A Yoruba man named Adebayo might be called Tom. An Igbo woman named Chiamaka might be called Mary. These new names were often common, simple English names, or sometimes classical names like Caesar or Pompey, given in cruel irony. This wasn't just about convenience for the enslavers. It was a deliberate act of dehumanization. A name connects you to your ancestors, to your community, to your very sense of self. To take that away is to say, you are no one. You belong to me. It was the first step in breaking a person's spirit and transforming them from an individual into property. Next came the assault on language. Africa is a continent of immense linguistic diversity, with thousands of languages and dialects. On the slave ships and plantations, people from different regions, speaking completely different languages, were intentionally mixed together. This was a calculated strategy to prevent communication and organization. How can you plan a revolt if you can't speak to the person next to you? This forced linguistic isolation created a terrifying and lonely world. The familiar sounds of home were gone, replaced by a cacophony of incomprehensible tongues and the harsh commands of the Over time, enslaved people began to develop new forms of communication: Pidgin and Creole languages that blended African linguistic structures with European vocabulary. Languages like Gulagichi in the coastal American South or Jamaican patois are powerful testaments to this resilience. Born from the ashes of stolen mother tongues, they are languages of survival. Then there was religion. For many African societies, spirituality was woven into the fabric of everyday life. It wasn't something you did for an hour a week. It was in the way you farmed, the way you celebrated, the way you mourned. These intricate systems of belief, with their own deities, rituals, and cosmologies, were deemed pagan and savage by European enslavers. Enslaved Africans were forcibly converted to Christianity. Their drums, which were vital for religious ceremonies and communication, were often banned, feared by slaveholders as tools for revolt. But faith is not so easily extinguished. While many adopted Christianity, they didn't simply discard their old beliefs. Instead, they cleverly and secretly blended their African spiritual practices with Christian ones. This process, called syncretism, is why in traditions like Voodoo in Haiti or Santeria in Cuba, you see African deities, the Orishas or Loa, associated with Catholic saints. It was a clandestine act of cultural preservation, a way to keep the gods of their ancestors alive in a new and hostile world. Perhaps the most devastating blow of all was the destruction of the family. In many African cultures, kinship is the central pillar of society. Your identity is defined by your relationship to your parents, your extended family, and your lineage. The slave trade shattered this foundation. Families were torn apart at the auction block. A husband could be sold to a plantation in Louisiana, his wife to one in Virginia, and their children scattered across the Carolinas, never to see each other again. This wasn't a tragic byproduct of the system. It was a feature. It was another tool of control. A person who has lost everyone they love is isolated, vulnerable, and easier to dominate. Enslavers actively discouraged stable family units, as they saw them as a potential source of strength and rebellion. Yet, even in the face of this unimaginable cruelty, enslaved people forged new kinship networks. They created fictive kin, calling unrelated elders auntie or uncle, and forming deep, family-like bonds with their fellow enslaved people on the plantation. They became brothers, sisters, and cousins in bondage, rebuilding the community that had been stolen from them. They understood that family was not just about blood, but about shared experience, care, and survival. So why is it so important to understand this process of systematic erasure? Because it reframes how we see the institution of slavery. It wasn't just about forced labor. It was a psychological war, a relentless campaign to annihilate a people's culture and identity. And when we understand that, we can more fully appreciate the incredible resilience and strength of those who endured it. Every time an enslaved person secretly whispered their African name, every time they told their children stories from the homeland in a newly formed Creole language, every time they sang a forbidden song to an old god, every time they formed a new family out of shared suffering, that was an act of defiance. It was an assertion of humanity in the face of a system designed to deny it. The legacy of this cultural stripping continues to this day. Many African Americans feel a sense of disconnection from their ancestral roots. The rise of DNA testing services that help people trace their lineage back to specific regions in Africa is a powerful modern response to this historical theft. It's a collective effort to reclaim what was lost, to piece back together the puzzle of identity that was deliberately shattered centuries ago. It's a journey to find the names, the languages, the stories, and the spiritual traditions of the ancestors. The history is painful, but it's a history of survival against all odds. It's the story of people who, after having everything taken from them, created new cultures, new languages, new families, and new ways of being in the world. They held onto the core of their humanity with a tenacity that is truly awe-inspiring. Their legacy isn't just one of suffering. It's a profound testament to the unbreakable nature of the human spirit. By remembering not just what was done to them, but how they fought back in quiet, cultural, and spiritual ways, we honor their memory and their incredible resilience. Thank you so much for watching. If this history is important to you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories that need to be told. See you next time.